Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to the Incredible Life Creator podcast show, the place to hear stories from global influencers, trailblazers, cutting edge visionaries, and empowered entrepreneurs from all walks of life who are examples of living and leading an incredible life, where living life on purpose and leaving a legacy is their sole focus. As you listen to these episodes, you will be inspired to leverage their teachings and experience to discover your passion and purpose and to create the incredible life of your dreams. Feel free to subscribe, share, and listen often. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the notification bell so you are notified whenever a new episode is released. At the end of today's podcast, I will outline how you can get the best value from each podcast episode. More on that later. But today I'm privileged to introduce Bridget Cook-Burch. Hey, Bridget.
Hi, Dr. Kimberley.
Hi. So let's talk about you. Bridget Cook-Burch is known as the Book Whisperer. She is a New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestselling mentor, trainer, mama bear, humanitarian, and speaker known for riveting stories of transformation. Her powerful work has been showcased on Oprah, CNN, GMA, Dateline, the History Channel, NPR, and in People, among many others. She is the CEO and founder of YourInspiredStory.com. Bridget is also a co-founder and executive director of SHEROES United, a nonprofit organization that helps women and girls rise from trauma. As a leader, storyteller, trainer, and humanitarian, her greatest passion is helping others to discover the importance of their own story and to become leaders in their own communities and worldwide. Welcome to the podcast. So glad to have you, Bridget.
Oh my goodness, I was so excited to receive your invitation. So I think we're sisters under the skin in the things that we love and believe in.
Yeah, so just so people can get to know you, although you've done quite a few things I see from your bio, why don't you tell us how you got to be doing what you're doing now?
Well, just like everybody else, I started from square one, right? But I do think I aligned with my passion fairly early. I was in college, was an avid reader, loved to study, was going after, a couple different degrees. And I had a near-death experience, and a lot of it had to do with the overachievement of things. And some of you might know what that's like, and I know you do. I was working 3 jobs, was going to school full-time, and just trying to make things meet and have a social life as a college student. But I got very, very sick. I ended up in the hospital. There were 2 nurses outside in the corridor saying, we better call her mom back because I don't think she's going to make it until morning. And so in that moment of recognizing I wasn't going to be alive on the planet the next day, my heart just, I felt so sad because I knew that I was here to do something, to create something, to be someone. And I kept trying to prove myself, but I didn't feel worthy of anything, really. I had low self-esteem. I had a lot of energy and positivity, but low self-esteem. And then I had a presence that filled my room and gave me a second chance at life. And it was amazing because, I knew I had not fulfilled the measure of my creation, but I had no idea what that was. After that near-death experience, though, Kimberly, I was determined to find out. And one of the things that happened for me is that situation changed my entire self-perception and the story I was telling myself. And I was able to go out and work with high-risk, groups of youth and gang members and other people and see the boxes of stories that they were living in. And, the drug deals they thought they had to do, the gang activities they thought they had to be involved in, things their parents had told them, their culture had told them, stronger in many cases than their religion. And then I would see some of these ones who would peek their heads out of the box and go, wow, I don't have to live here. And that's when I fell in love with the human soul. I'm like, if I'm going to write, these are the stories I want to write of transformation. So people who've been through the depths of hell and have come out on the other side. And I began to write their stories, the ones that were doing well, if that makes sense, after having really tough beginnings. And so I found that passion, and then things just proceeded from there. But it did take me a while to be able to do what I love full time.
So, as you were telling the story, I was thinking, it sounds like as a college student, you're one of those high achievers. I mean, you worked, you did your schooling, you had in your mind to be successful,
Mhm.
and you were doing it by a lot of work and a lot of effort. And my curiosity is in how you were thinking then, and then you have this near-death experience, and then you wake up and you're thinking differently. But even so, even if you know what your passion is or why you're here, it's still going to take work. So what was the difference between your mindset before, the mindset after, and how you approached your work and how you approached life?
So I would say that I did not lose that overachiever status. That's something that I've recently been in touch with. But I did begin doing things out of love. When I had that near-death experience, this presence in my room didn't care how much money I had or didn't have, how much debt I was in, any lousy grades I might have been getting at the time, lousy relationships, how much partying I was doing in college. What he cared about was me unconditionally, and I'd never felt that before. I had amazing parents, but I'd never felt that. And so coming out of this, I still was determined. I still was type A. I still felt like I had to prove myself, maybe even a little bit more to a degree, but through love. And that's what that whole different shift was. So it was amazing, like being able to look into the eyes of any of these young people and to be able to see love there. That was extraordinary. So I still worked very hard and sometimes too hard, but it was for something now. It was for something that I believed in and was passionate about.
Mhm. So the way you would set up your schedule or prioritize things, did that change for you? Because obviously what you were doing before was making you sick.
Yeah.
So is there things that you changed that helped you put things in perspective or work on the things that were more important?
I would say so, because before this too, I would just like head down and get to work. And I was somewhat protective of my time and my relationships with people, just because of that confidence level. After this, it was like sometimes I would still experience scarcity of time outside of meeting with people, but when I would meet with people, when I would get to spend time with them, I would just be so present. And for the first time in my life, I learned how to really listen and listen well and listen from the heart. And I think I was also gifted to see the way that God sees more than what my human self could see before. And so I would see this, incredible being in front of me and would be able to ask two things that I think were not possible for me before that. One was the dark. I was afraid of my own dark. And I was afraid of the darkness of other people. But at this time, I learned to just walk with them through those dark experiences as they were, sharing things with me. And then their light. And I wasn't afraid to ask them too about what they loved and who they loved and what they were passionate about. And I just became to fall in love with people. And so in their presence, it would feel like time stopped, like it did in the hospital. And so, yes, my priorities did change. I still would be like, hell no, pedal to the metal outside of meetings and different things. But as I started to write more and interview more people and find out more of these experiences, I began to change and shift inside. And so that was extraordinary too, and helped me change priorities. Like a lot of us, though, I still had to find a way to make a living and have a life. And so I would do certain kinds of work, like I did public relations, and then I had a scrapbook company, and then ran a phone book and a trucking company as I was writing people's stories, and got to have some tremendous things. I wrote about a former skinhead who changed his life. and started teaching kids to stay out of gangs. And he's been on CNN and the History Channel and all number of things. Pretty amazing guy. And then a woman had contacted me after that, had read his book, asked if I would be willing to work with her. And she was the daughter of the happy face serial killer. And that was one of those, we'll just call it a come to Jesus moment, right? Where it was, how do I write a story of inspiration about a serial killer's daughter? Because there was all kinds of true crime out there, but that wasn't what she was wanting, nor what I would want to write. I wanted stories of transformation. But as I got to know her, I would get these downloads, but also just she was extraordinary. And her book ended up being showcased on Oprah when she was on there. It was the first time Oprah and Dr. Phil came back together. And I just got to watch her just blossom and blossom through the telling of her story and going through the dark again and having a witness. And she healed so much by revealing those things. And now she's a producer in LA and she's doing extraordinary things. I learned so much from her in that journey and what storytelling does and what, our ability to go back into our deep dark, because in there I have discovered lies the seeds of our greatest glory. And even people who have been through incredible trauma and difficult situations, it's like, I have noticed on a pendulum swing that people who have been through a lot of darkness and trauma have the greatest penchant for the greatest light if they allow themselves. And so it's not always something we think about. Oftentimes we try to avoid our past, avoid our dark, avoid memories. But this is where my passion is helping people to discover, wow, when you also tell a story, if you just are like what most people like to do, right? In coaching and in other things we see, like, I was just going along in life. And then all of a sudden I had a breakthrough and it's like, oh, unicorns and rainbows, right? But there's not a lot of depth to that. And when people, especially coaches and, speakers and entertainers and actors and business people, when they're willing to recognize what were my patterns, what was I before I found my passion, overcame my my greatest difficulties, they all of a sudden have these rises and falls and depth to their story. And now they're like, people are listening to me. They want me to come and speak and they want to engage in business and they want me on their podcasts and things. And I just get all excited because I'm like, here comes the magic. It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. You can't tell I'm passionate about that. Sorry.
So, some of these people have gone through some really difficult things or some things that most people wouldn't want to share. I've heard that if you have a secret, sometimes it's better to share it because then it doesn't have charge anymore. Then but where do you draw the line as far as what do we share with our stories? And what things do we want to be public? Because a book is pretty public, or doing what we're doing here. This is pretty public. Anything we say is going to be out to the world very quickly. So how do you choose what things to share that'll be transformational and what things is like, we shouldn't share that piece, but we know it's a piece of the transformation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I love it. So one of the things that I suggest is that you choose to tell the truth to yourself and let yourself see it in black and white. And so especially those who've overcome quite a bit, if they're working on a book or a speech, I often invite them to create a timeline and to really understand, not just I'm going to write down some memories and things, but like to really see what happened line upon line, right? Day upon day, and give themselves some retrospection to where it's like, I didn't realize I made that decision because of what he said, or it was right after she died that I did this thing. And all of a sudden, all the puzzle pieces come together. Even we've had, this wonderful woman, wonderful elderly woman that came to my Inspired Writers Retreat. And she's like, I like me better now. I understand me better now. So that's when you're working on something for you. And oftentimes, when we're writing a book or we're figuring out our story, that first draft, that first layout of information, nobody's eyes need to see it except you. You've got to figure out what you want to say, but also to share, to be a witness to yourself of who you are and what you've been through and what makes you tick, right? The patterns that didn't serve you, but also your rise, your overcoming. And so then when you're getting ready to release something, so whether it's on video or whether it's in a speech or whether it's in a book, then you can say, okay, I can tell a little bit about these pieces, and you're careful about other people you're in relationships with. You care about people who are spouses and former spouses and children and things like that, because they're highly affected by things that are spoken in a speech or put in a book. And so you make sure you're being careful about that, but you can allude to some things in the telling, and then in the deepest turning points of showing, you do tell the secrets of how you felt and how it affected you, but never negate your rise. Because if you stay in the deep dark, then you're a victim. And, we hate being victims, everybody. It's one of those things where we detest it in ourselves and we detest it in other people. But people do like to know, oh my goodness, Kimberley is human. Like, she's been through some of these things, and then this is how she rose. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I get it. If Kimberley can do this, then maybe I can do this too in my own way. And that's when a story becomes transformational. And so, for every person, there's a difference between what details you will publish or speak out loud. And it usually concerns other people. But for your own stuff, two things. In the big book for AA, they say you are only as sick as your secrets. And I have found this to be true, that the people who hold to those secrets and who keep them hidden and refuse to look at them, they often get overcome with cancer or alcoholism, drugs, other patterns of behavior that doesn't serve them, and their entire life will be a struggle. But in revealing secrets, and it doesn't mean that it has to be to Dr. Phil and the whole world, right? But in facing your own secrets, and then again, creating this rise and fall of something that you're going to share about transformation in your own life, that's when it is no longer a secret, it's an empowering story. And there's such a difference. So I'm so glad that you asked that question, because it is something, especially when people are working on their own stories, not a fictional story, but completely true. What details do I leave in? Which ones do I leave out? And a lot of it depends too, is like, some people have more than one book. So I'll reveal some things in this one and some things in this self-help book that I'm going to choose to do, but it'll be different from my memoir, So it just depends. And it also depends on, like, why are you wanting to share, and where are you planning to leverage your book or your speech so that you can help more people, but also for your own career. Where would you like to be? Would you like to be speaking from stages? Would you like to have a TV program? Would you like just your business to be more effective no matter what you're doing in work? So it just depends on what you want to leverage.
Yeah, and I was thinking as you were speaking about that, a lot of times when we write a book, so I wrote a book, Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Life. It's kind of a step-by-step guide to, how to look at yourself and say, what do I like? Who am I? And, what do I want? And it has stories interspersed. But I share a story of how 9 weeks before I was married, I lost my fiance. And I think to myself, I'm good now. I found love. I've healed from that. But I don't want to keep saying it over and over. So right now I'm reworking my signature speech where I go and I speak to groups. And my coach said, well, why don't you include that story? And I'm like, I don't want to include that story because I don't want to stand on stage all next year and relive the story of losing him. I said, I might mention it briefly because it's in my book. But at this point, it's like, okay, I'm in a different place now. And I don't want to keep reliving that. So I almost need a new book or a new speech or whatever.
I was
So,
going to say, you're so far beyond that. It sounds like a new book is in order.
right. And, I think that people, once they share that, it's almost like, okay, I need a new something to let people know where I'm at now.
Mhm.
So as you're working with authors, do you encourage them just to do a second book, or how do you handle that?
Absolutely. Because I like to think of it as the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell put some extraordinary ideas out there. They're not perfect, especially for women, but there are these steps along a timeline of a cycle that we live in. And he wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And he recognized that in all these cultures all around the world, including ours, that everybody goes on this hero's or shero's journey.
Mhm.
What I find fascinating is that people who are really choosing to live like yourself, you put yourself out there. So what's going to happen? You travel, you have experiences, you meet great new people, you break bread in extraordinary places, you have more ups and downs, right? So you finished up one hero's journey and now you're on another, which is fantastic. I remember I was one of the first in my family to break the cycle of substance abuse. And I thought, okay, I'm done. Like, life is sweet. I won't, have any of these other things. And then I got to overcome a cycle of domestic violence in what I married into. And then I was like, okay, this should be it, right? But it continues to go. If you are willing to live life as you are, you're going to have more content. And I just got to tell you, Emerson said, like, either live something worth reading or write something worth, but he's like, I'm not saying it correctly, but anyway, he's essentially saying what I like to say is, you gotta live juicy to write juicy.
Mhm.
So go out there, have experiences, content will come like crazy. And, most of us have overcome more than one issue in our lives. And that's why we may be prolific authors.
Mhm. Yeah. And, as we go through life, I know I'm stronger. The older I get, the stronger I get, the more mature I am, the more I feel confident and good, and the more I can actually step out into the unknown and take bigger risks, still calculated risks, but I take bigger risks. And it's a little scary, but then when I take that risk, it's like, oh, that's where the excitement is. That's where the excitement is. And then you definitely have something to write about.
Yeah, I love that. Because even just now, here's the way my book whisperer brain works. I'm like, Kimberly, you could be on the stage and you could be saying, there came a time in life where I had to take a risk in love. And I was the one that got left, a few weeks before the altar. Like, how was I going to do that? And then people would be like, you what? And then they're going to want to read your first book as well as your second book when you go into more details. So this is a way that you don't have to continue to live that one while you're in your next phase. So yeah, I love that.
Now, you have a retreat where people can actually go really deep into their lives. So they're healing their lives, and at the same time they're creating or birthing this book that they can share. Why don't you talk about that process?
Oh, I would love to. I would like to share why I started retreats in the first place, because here I am, an author, and I have lots of stories to write, and didn't necessarily need to help other people with theirs. But I've always been intrigued with leadership, and I saw what happened with Melissa. I saw what happened with TJ. I saw what happened with Rebecca and other people I've worked with, where all of a sudden that diving deep into their story and creating the process of a book, suddenly emotionally they're set up for leadership. And then the book helps them to leverage that. And it was fascinating to me. And after my second book came out on Oprah, I had more than 200 people ask if I would write their life stories. And at the time, I was a single mom. I had just left a domestic violence situation with my marriage. I was running a trucking company and a phone book,
Mhm.
and I couldn't write everybody's stories. And I'm like, these are incredible stories. And there was a woman that contacted me from California, and she's extremely amazing. But not only contacted me like the rest of these, she drove from California to Salt Lake City area, and she said, "Hey, I'm here. I know you're my author, and I drove all the way because I must meet you." And I'm like, holy cow, who is this woman, right? And she's like, "I'm at this hotel. If you could meet me even just for a few minutes, I just want to share with you." And I'm like, okay, well, if she's going to do that, I'm at least going to give her an hour of my time. So I packed up my laptop, drove to the hotel, and met her. And what she told me knocked my socks off. Because, obviously I've heard a lot of victim stories and I love the victor stories, but hers was so unusual. So she had been raised as a baby. And I'm sorry, we got a thunderstorm, so I hope it's not too loud. She was raised as a baby to support her parents. And she essentially was raised as a domestic slave. Like, she never got married, never fell in love, wasn't really allowed to leave the house. It was always to serve her high level parents. So her mom was an RN and her father was this businessman, and they had a trust fund and they kept having her sign checks over. Well, she turns 40 and they both died. And come to find out, this trust fund was embezzling from the IRS and the Veterans Administration. So now she's in trouble as an adult. And then she finds out that her mother is not an upstanding RN, wasn't, and that she had been dealing in black market babies. And then she found out she was one of them. And Kimberly, she'd been bought for the price of a washing machine. And that was her life. So imagine, her whole story is just shattered. And she doesn't know who she is, what she's about. She's 40, never fallen in love, never been a mom, nothing. So she's sharing with me, and she has this young son swimming in the pool. And I'm like, okay, so life changed after that. Tell me about that. And she said a couple of things, that she would never tell lies to her son, that she would always have an open communication with him. And she's doing all these things for open adoption. And then she said, I may have come into this world not knowing who I am, but I am not leaving that way. And that got me. I'm like, okay, even though I'm running these other businesses and I'm working on another book, I am going to write your story. And then she passed away from cancer fast. Like, she was here and then she was gone. And I celebrated everything that she had learned about herself. I thought it was extraordinary, but I didn't get to know her that well. I didn't get to know all facets enough to write her book. And I thought, this can't happen to all these 200 other people, and there's more stories, I'm sure. So that's when I developed the Inspired Writers Retreat. And so we do it 4 times a year, always up in nature, twice a year by a lake in the summer, and then up near Park City in the winter, and one in Ireland, by the way. And what we do there is this really deep dive of, what is your story? How best to outline it? What are those rises and falls? How do you tell it best? What form should it be? Should this be a self-help? Should it be a memoir? Should it just be an autobiography for your family? Like, what is the best? And we overcome the 3 greatest fears that keep most people from writing, publishing, and launching their books. And so I love it because it's been inspired. That's why we call it the Inspired Writers Retreat. So I can't take credit. But what I will share with you is that lives change and stories come out of there that knock your socks off. When people get their books done, they are impeccable leaders. Doesn't mean they're perfect. And we actually revel in that. Like, you're human on this messy human journey. You're going to continue to have, issues and not always show up perfectly, but this is where your glory lies, and in being that fallible human being. And Kimberly, as you know, right now in our country is a really difficult time to show up as a leader. And I get kind of choked up about this, but people are so fast to hate. So a book does something extraordinary where it lets people, it's not just this quick online thing, where they can jump to conclusions. It's like you can explain yourself to such a degree and with such powerful writing that people may not end the book believing exactly the way you do, but they understand why you believe what you believe. And the hatred flies out the window, and the judgments fly out the window, and people's ideas are expanded. And so, anyway, I love it because of that grounding that leaders get. And then this ability to overcome the fear and to say, I'm going to be the woman or the man in the arena anyway. There may be all kinds of people in the stands who are going to, throw out and spew their hate, but I'm going to live while I can live. I'm going to live juicy. And so I love it.
Now, we all want our story told and heard once we actually put all the work into a book. So just a practical question. What's the best way to put out a book? Should we do paperback? Should we do hardback? Should we just do Kindle or, e-reader book? And once we choose that, how should we tell people about the book? How should we let people know? Or how do we disseminate our message?
That's a great question. And I love it. I discuss that a lot. It's kind of a big deal right now with publishing, like the sky's the limit on publishing, and you can either self-publish or you can go traditional. They both have their pros and cons. And I do have some free resources on my website, on the Your Inspired Story website, where you can walk through some of those pros and cons and go, I think this might be my answer. And then we spend a whole day on my retreat going through those things for specific people. But I will say there's so many extraordinary opportunities for books these days. So one of the things that I would share is that like your book is already out, but it is evergreen. So you can continue to expose people to it. And as long as you make it available on Amazon and some of these other things, then you can continue for that book to be hot for years and years to come, which is a beautiful thing. If you haven't put your book out yet, I always just really encourage and invite you to have a pre-launch plan, a launch plan, and a post-launch plan. And so the pre-launch is, who am I going to share with leading up to, like podcasters and friends of influence and other things, to read this in advance, write me reviews, tell people about it, get ready to launch. And then for your launch, I recommend not just have one day, but have a big push for at least 72 hours. And then for the week, like have, book signings, do online promotion, have contests and prizes, give away a chapter of your book if you're able. It depends on who your publisher is, but there's all of these different things that you can do to create bestseller status on Amazon, on other things, and get the sales up, but also the eyes visible on it. And then the post-launch, which is, how am I going to keep this evergreen in the eyes of new people all the time so that they can benefit from all of this information that I've put out? Now, you asked about the different formats. I am going to share with you, ebooks are important. And for a long time, they were the biggest rise in what was happening with books. So no matter what, do an ebook. Paperback and hardcover are really fun. Always do a paperback. And if it is, a legacy piece, and if you are speaking on stages to crowds, and you're going to be selling at the back of the room, I always recommend a hardcover if you can, because it is more value for people to write, and they're going to want you to write a little message to them and sign the book. And so it's a prestigious thing, but it's also, people perceive a hardback as real value. So you usually just do a short run of the hardback, and then a longer run of the paperback, depending on if you're traditional or the other. But the biggest trend right now that is rising so fast are Audible audiobooks. So not just Audible, but Audible is one of the biggest ones. But 57% it rose in the last year alone, not just in the UK, but in the United States. And part of it is people are listening Sorry, that's my dog. People are listening to audiobooks on their commutes, on their runs, when they're getting ready in the morning. You know, people have gotten hooked on podcasts, but they love books as well. And so if you can, I highly recommend that you get an audiobook. And Kimberly, if you don't have an audiobook of your current one, especially if you have the ability to record it in your own voice, it is a wonderful way for people to get to know you and to love your entire story. And that way too, when you're on stage or somebody meets you, you say, oh, that was all in my first book. And then concentrate on where you are now. So it's a wonderful tool 100 ways over.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. And is there anything else that prospective authors should be thinking about, or anything else we need to know?
Yes, I would say that right now the world is very hungry for good leadership, very hungry for people who are willing to tell the truth, willing to be vulnerable, but also willing to share their rise. I got to meet a wonderful gentleman from Ireland at National Speakers Association right before COVID hit. And he was talking to me because he's retired and extremely successful. And he'd been doing a couple of speeches with his signature story, and he called it Park Lane Patty to Park Bench. And so it was these kind of rises and falls to his dark night where he lost everything and was almost homeless until someone believed in him. And when he was giving his speeches, he was ending there. Instead of telling everyone about his rise, he negated his own rise. What I want to share with you is that most of us have grown up to be humble. And we may have, done incredible things, but we've been taught, don't grow too high. We call it trim the poppies, right? Don't grow too high. Don't be too full of yourself. This isn't about being full of yourself. Humans need stories of transformation. They need to know that you can have survived the depths of hell, and that, in that inmost cave, we call it the dark night of the soul, where your inner battles and your outer battles really meet. And, that you're in the dragon's lair, and then you find out, oh my gosh, I'm the dragon. I'm part of this whole issue, right? And you decide to overcome anyway. And then you rise and you have these successes, and you're able to show the reader, life was not perfect, but I was able to do these things. And there is some validation and vindication on that side. It shouldn't be the only reason to write a book, but not to negate it, like how important it is to show it. And so I just really suggest that be humble, but there is great beauty in your humility of being able to share your rise, because other humans need it, especially right now.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to contact you or find out about your retreat, how do they find you?
Well, the easiest way is the yourinspiredstory.com. So I shouldn't say it's just yourinspiredstory.com. And there's all kinds of, contact me kind of things on there. I love friends on Facebook. I love friends on Instagram. And those are the two primary places I hang out, just because of lack of time. I'm working with people and their stories. So I'm not one of those that has millions and millions and millions of followers, because I'm working with people on their books. And I'm just fine with that. So, but I do love to make new friends all the time. So find me on Facebook. It's under M. Bridget Cook-Burch. It's gotten really out of hand, but I'm so happy about that Birch. So that's how you can find me, or Bridget Cook-Burch with a 2, the I after it, because I have too many friends on one and got to be on the other one. So those are the 2 easiest ways to reach me, and I would be delighted if you reached back out.
All right, thank you. And now a personal question. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life right now?
Always, it is my family. I wasn't supposed to be able to have children after that near-death experience. It was like, nope, you're going to be done. And I was able to have children. So I have 3 plus a bonus daughter, and just watching them grow and seeing them on their own heroes and sheroes journeys, and just what extraordinary people they're turning out to be every day brings me joy.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for sharing your stories and your inspiration and transformation. Just so thankful.
I'm thankful to be here. I appreciate it. And I love the work that you're doing. I love the work that the visualization and absolute claiming of joy. Sometimes people think that at this day and time, like that we can't or shouldn't feel joy. And I would just love to share with you, this is the perfect time to be a joyful person. And again, the planet is hungry for it. So I'm grateful, Kimberly, that you are one that just lets your light shine. So it's needed in this darkness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And one last question. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Well, of course, it would have to do with story, right? I will share with you this. There is a quote from Harold Goddard, another author that lived a while back. He said, "The destiny of the world is determined less by the battles lost and won than by the stories it loves and believes in." So I want to ask you and your listeners a question. If the destiny of the world is determined less by battles lost and won than the stories it loves and believes in, what about you? What are the stories that you love and believe in? And are they stories of limitation, or are they stories of possibility? And if they're limitation, then I invite you to write a new chapter, to change your life into something more extraordinary. And honestly, to me, the biggest key to that is gratitude. Because I'm like you, Kimberly, I have a very optimistic attitude, but I can get in a funk. And the last couple of years of what our country, our nation, our world has gone through with multiple things, it is easy to get sucked into the dark. And the easiest way for me to live a joyful life and move my energy frequency up a dramatic way is through gratitude. I call gratitude the great multiplier. So the minute I start this downward spiral, I'll go get out my journal and I'll write 3 things. 3 things I'm incredibly grateful for. And it's not just like my dog scratching on the door and that we're finally getting rain in our drought state, and things like that. But I'll go even deeper and make sure that they're super deep. And sometimes people think, I don't have time to write. But even if you write in your journal every day, today's magical moments, and that's all you got to do is write 3 sentences. It will keep your brain sharp and clear. It will help you remember things. And it also will keep you focused on that gratitude. And that expands. It just expands like crazy. So try it out. You may really be surprised.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on today. And my purpose in broadcasting Incredible Life Creator is to inspire you to live a happier, healthier, and more prosperous life. In doing so, you influence and inspire those around you to do the same. There are 6 ways you can assist me to influence more people on this planet of ours. 1, if there's a topic or person you would like to hear from, please let me know in the comments on my YouTube channel, Incredible Life Creator. If you are a global influencer, trailblazer, cutting-edge visionary, empowered entrepreneur, and would like to be interviewed, then fill in the application form and let's arrange a 1-hour, no obligation fee consultation session to see what could be possible. If you are interested in launching your own podcast show to grow your influence, then let's talk. Or if you know of anyone who is looking for a standout keynote speaker, then I am now offering keynote speaking as a new service offering focused on leading and living an incredible life. I would value introductions to conference organizations, human resources, VPs, keynote speaking bureaus, agents who specialize in booking keynote speakers. I'm also interested in being booked as a guest on high-profile shows nationally and internationally. So if you know of any booking agents who are wanting new, innovative, and interesting guests for their upcoming shows, Then I will be available for guest appearances starting in September. And last but not least, as most of you know, I'm a doctor of behavioral optometry spanning 3 decades. In September of this year, I'm excited to officially announce that I will be launching a global venture passion project I have been working for months called Optic Brain Fit, which is like CrossFit for your brain. It's a new technology which combines vision, brain, and movement simultaneously. It can be used for rehabilitation, enhancement, and maintenance of a person's physical, mental, and emotional functioning ability. It can be used in a wide variety of demographics, special needs, to children, to athletes, to adults, to executives, to the elderly. The technology works on a gradient, allowing each participant to be progressing and learning, beginning at a level that is doable and increasing the grade as the person increases in their abilities. It can be used with nonverbal, low vision, and low functioning individuals, as well as elite athletes and high-level C-suite executives and intellectual geniuses. I'm excited to share more about the project in the coming months, but wanted to let you, my valued network, know that I am championing my dreams and doing what it takes to live and lead an incredible life. If this piques interest and you wish to know more about this passion project, then message me direct. I would love you to subscribe, like, comment, share to help me spread love and positivity in the world. For more information, make sure you check out www.drkimberleylinert.com and follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thank you for your generosity of listening today. And that was my first time doing that information. So if anyone's interested in any of those things, please contact me, Facebook, LinkedIn, or on my website. So thank you so much. And thank you, Bridget, for being here today.
I'm delighted. I also want to hear more about your passion project, so we'll get to talk.
All right, that sounds great. All right, we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.